Okay, we are ready to go. Thank you.
Not yet, Max.
Not yet.
Speak up, Max.
I've got COVID-19.
Yes, yeah. Oh, we all have.
Smoking too much.
Never seen it.
It's stuck in arms.
True story. Just made it away from another work close. And we gave away. I think he's 65.
I don't know what's coming.
Don't worry about it. I mean, it's got light in it.
Yeah, this is 62nd July. Presuming the USA still goes.
Ready to go. Okay. Welcome, councillors, CEO, executive, and good evening to our watchers and listeners on YouTube. I am Max Lesser, the Deputy Mayor, and I'm sitting in the chair this evening in place of Mayor Henderson, who is an apology due to illness. And if you're watching this, Mayor, we hope you do get better. Thank you. Now, to start official proceedings, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on Jara country, of which the members and elders of the Jara community and their forebears have been custodians for many centuries and have performed age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. We acknowledge their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region. Council meetings are audio and video recorded and are made available to the public via electronic media, including YouTube. Conducting a council meeting remotely and supported by technology is a new experience for us all. Our council advocated for amendments to the Local Government Act to enable remote meetings to be held. This enables council to continue to meet and conduct business through our current lockdown restrictions. We are pleased to be able to meet tonight, albeit in a unique manner. Certainly is unique. And councillors, I have a recommendation before me. Do I have a mover and seconder for a motion, please?
I'll move the recommendation, Deputy Mayor, that Council allow for councillors to attend the ordinary meeting of Council, 19th of May 2020, under the Local Government Act, Part 12, Section 394, and to close the ordinary meeting of Council, 19th of May 2020, under the Local Government Act 2020, Part 12, Section 395, to the public. And note that where there are connectivity issues and a quorum of council cannot be met, or there are technical difficulties in being able to broadcast the meeting to the public, the meeting will be adjourned for a period of 30 minutes until the issue is resolved, or it'll be postponed to 6:30 p.m. on the 26th of May 2020.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Thank you. Is the motion opposed? No. Therefore, the motion is carried. Now we have an apology from our Mayor, who's really sick. And as I said before, I hope you do get better, Mayor. And I know that this will be interesting listening and watching from your bedside. Now, declarations of interest and conflicts of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest and conflicts of interest, please? Yes, Councillor Machin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have a conflict of interest, indirect conflict of interest with agenda item 10.1.1, the adoption of a neighbourhood house policy, as I'm a member of the Committee of Management of Castlemaine Community House.
Thank you for that, Ron, Councillor.
Mr. Chairman.
Did you have something, Councillor Neiman?
Yeah, I've got a live parking ticket. Which may or may not come up in the small rules.
Okay, thank you.
So
I'll deal with that one later on. Okay, now we have the confirmation of minutes from the ordinary meeting of the 17th of March 2020. Again, councillors, I have a recommendation before me. Do I have a mover and seconder for the motion, please?
I'll move it as printed.
Do I have a seconder for that motion, please? Sorry, yeah, okay, thank you, councillor. Okay, the motion is carried. Now we come to public question time, and we need to ask somebody to suspend the standing orders, please.
I move, Deputy Mayor, that we suspend standing orders for the purposes of reading out public questions.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Thank you, councillor Cordy.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not watching the screen too well.
Well, I'll make a noise next time.
Yes, thank you. I've just got to get used to it. Okay. I have in front of me 2 letters that were sent in, and I will read those out to you now so that they can be acknowledged. And I do have answers as well from the directors. The first letter that I have in front of me is a letter from Mr. Ken Hobden, Main Road, Chewton, and it says, "Dear councillors, I'm writing to express concerns and to ask the council to address questions that I have regarding subdivision of blocks in progress at 20 Steele Street, Chewton. Planning permit PA 265-2017. As a resident of 57 Main Road, Chewton, we are right on the corner, and along with the rest of the residents of Steele Street, are very concerned that development could be completed without the upgrade of the intersection, which was a condition of the planning permit. We have had correspondence over the last 12 months with Michelle Hutchins of the Planning Department, as have other residents, and were given assurance that plans detailing the work will be done, still had to be submitted, and approval given by Vic Roads and Council. Section 6.1 of the permit states that engineering plans for road and drainage works had to be submitted and approved before work was to commence. As the work is well underway, we must assume that this has happened, but I am yet to see any evidence of plans approved with regard to the Main Road intersection. Could the council inform us of the decision it has made in this matter and how it could possibly have ruled the intersection adequate to cope with existing, let alone increased traffic, which will soon come? If a decision has not been made re the intersection, then why has work been allowed to proceed to the extent that it has? Has proper process been followed according to planning regulations in this case? Every resident of Steele Street could provide incidents of either having to wait for a vehicle to exit before being able to enter, or having to reverse back up Steele Street to allow for passing traffic. We have witnessed drivers reversing back into the centre of the main road when they realise the line that they have taken won't get them around the car wishing to exit. I can find no amendments to the planning permit on green light, so assume the original conditions still apply, but have had no response to our request for information from the council. Thank you for considering our concerns, Ken Hobden." Now, I do have a reply regarding the planning permit PA 265-2017 and the intersection of Steele Street and Main Road, Chewton. Council officers have investigated the history of this matter. Prior to the permit being issued, the original application was referred to various relevant authorities, including Vic Roads. As Vic Roads is responsible for the intersection, Vic Roads included permit conditions requiring the developer upgrade the intersection. The matter went before council for a decision on the 21st of August 2018, with the officer recommendation that all conditions provided by the relevant authorities be included in the permit. This included the Vic Roads condition. Council's decision at the meeting of 21st of August 2018 was to grant the permit with the exclusion of the Vic Roads condition. Council's decision was not contested and the permit was issued. Condition 6 required the developer to submit engineering plans prior to the commencement of any construction works associated with the subdivision, detailing how the intersection allows for simultaneous entry and exit movements. These plans were provided to council prior to the commencement of construction works as required and were endorsed as satisfactory by council's engineering department. There is no breach of the planning permit, and as such, the certificate of compliance can be issued without alteration to the intersection. Council officers will provide Mr. Hobden with a written response in accordance with this advice. The next letter that we have received was from Alison Nye, a ratepayer, shopkeeper and community worker. And is as follows. As a lover of dogs, when am I going to get a break? I have been affected by the current owners, irresponsible owners and the council in the following ways. Non-enforcement of own bylaws, MAS, e.g. policing dogs in no-dog areas, example Victory Park, Botanic Garden Playground, not issuing fines for several or fewer than 5, allowing owners in the CBD to own more than 2 dogs. I know 5 who own more, not having an up-to-date dog policy, not offering any education program, failing to address the fouling of CBD by allowing dogs anytime, updating rules to safeguard health and well-being at farmers market. I am now asking for some proper action, not another brush-off letter. We non-dog owners deserve a place of health and safety to both live and work. Council have an obligation to provide it. The reply to that letter is as follows. As per Victorian laws, council officers are not in a position to restrict dogs from public markets if they are under an owner's control. Due to current COVID-19 social distancing requirements, we have communicated that we would prefer people do not bring their dogs to the markets, but if they do, they have to keep them on a short leash. The farmers market website also stipulates no dogs. Council will shortly be undertaking public consultation regarding the adoption of a new order of council to control dogs and cats in public places. It is expected that this will replace all existing orders and will focus on managing dogs and cats with consideration to our urban, rural demographic. Well, they were the only 2 questions that have been submitted to us. Councillors, can I have a motion to resume standing orders?
I'll move to resume, Deputy Mayor.
And thank you, Councillor Cordy, for a seconder. And that's carried. We now come on to petitions and joint letters. And this is item number 7.1, a safe thoroughfare for school children and residents along Friars Road, Campbell's Creek. Councillors, I have a recommendation before me. Do I have a mover and seconder for a motion?
Motion. That's a
Yes. May I have a motion?
Councillor motion.
Councillor, I'll get back to it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Ah, yes.
I do have a motion, and that is 1, that council acknowledges receipt of the document requesting the installation of bike and walking path along Friars Road, Campbell's Creek to make a safe thoroughfare. 2, refer the matter to council officers to provide a response to the lead signatory. 3, that the officers' response is included in the next meeting's agenda papers for council to note. And 4, that council's website is improved to make it easier for members of the public to find out how to write legitimate petitions.
Thank you, Councillor Mason.
Happy to second that, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, seconded, Councillor Petrusman. Is the motion opposed? I can't see anybody opposing it. Okay, Councillor Mason, as the mover, would you like to address the meeting? You have 5 minutes to do that.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I'm very happy that the officers respond to that. I understand very much that residents would like to have safe walking and cycling for their kids and for themselves. And I'll be very interested to see what our officers think can be done. Quite often it's not much, but I'll be very grateful to see that. It isn't, according to local law number 1, a legitimate petition, but I'm quite confident that we as councillors are all very concerned and are listening. And so therefore I'd like it in a way to be treated as a petition. And it's also one of several sort of petitions we've received that haven't been legitimate under our local law. We have requested as councillors that the next time the local law is reviewed, that it is brought up to date to a modern world where emails happen. And that will happen in the next year or so. But in the meantime, it'd be very useful for people to be able to easily find out how to do petitions rather than knowing that it's bound up in local law number 1.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mason. Any other councillor would like to address the meeting?
Oh, just very quickly,
You've got
Deputy
3
Mayor.
minutes.
I won't take that. Just to reiterate to any person or groups of people that are wanting to make a petition to council, at this stage, council still requires the full name and the residential address of the person not signing the petition. Email addresses and phone numbers can be added, but it must have a residential address to comply with the local law. So if in any doubt, contact council prior to putting out a petition. Otherwise, unfortunately, it can't be accepted as one. And that's it, and I support the motion.
Anybody, any other councillor would like to speak? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to the next item, which is a follow-up petition requesting pedestrian crossing, traffic islands and or median strip in Barker Street at Parker Street, Castlemaine. Councillors, I have a recommendation before me. Do I have a mover and seconder, please?
Councillor Nation again.
Yes, Councillor Mason, you are the mover. Do I have a seconder?
Oh,
No, sorry. Deputy Mayor, I'd like to add a point to the recommendation.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So it's that council acknowledges the receipt of the document requesting that council advocate for the installation of a pedestrian island or median strip at an intersection of Barker and Parker Street, Castlemaine, and 2, thank the lead signatory for their effort to assist in demonstrating the need for a safe crossing point in Barker Street near Parker Street and provide them with an update on the work that council has done and continues to do to achieve this. And 3, that the officer's response is included in the next meeting's agenda papers for councillors to note.
happy to second that, Deputy Mayor, as per the reading of Councillor Mason.
Is the motion opposed? No. The mover of the motion has 5 minutes to address the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We all have been longing to get a safe crossing there. And so I'm also pleased to see in the report how much work that our council officers and our mayors have been doing to advocate for this. We've tried and tried through various different routes, and we will keep trying because this is very important to the health of our community. We've seen how popular during this COVID time the Botanical Garden is, and we need that crossing for so many reasons, including access to some of our best places. So thank you to the officers for their continued work.
Any other council would like to speak to this motion?
Just to support what Councillor Mason said, the council are working hard to try to get this to happen. And I'd urge people to continue to contact their local member, Marie Edwards, and we'll keep working with our local member in Vic Roads to see if we can get this to happen in the near future.
Thank you, Councillor Petrusma. Anybody else? As there's no opposition, this motion is carried.
Do we need to actually?
Not to clarify that, Mr. Plaza.
I think we might.
All good.
Put a hand up.
Okay.
I don't know.
Just possibly check with our
Yeah, that's probably my
governance
mistake.
officer.
Okay. Yes, that probably is my mistake. Okay, if the motion's carried, put your hands up. All those in favour?
Yep.
Yes, good. That's why I have my fellow councillors to keep them on track.
I'm sure that's what the balance is.
Okay. We now come to the record of assemblies of councillors. Councillors, I have a recommendation in front of me to regarding the record of assemblies of councillors. Do I have a mover?
Only your job, isn't it?
That is usually my job, but I can see councillor Neiman has moved it. And Ron mentioned is the second. Is the motion opposed? Okay. All those in favour?
Tony?
Put your hands up. Yes, we can all see it. Okay, the motion is carried. We move on to our next item, which is the adoption of, which is item 10.1.1, the adoption of a neighbourhood house policy. And understanding this particular item, the councillor Mason has a conflict of interest.
Deputy Mayor, what page are we on?
We're on page 21 of 88.
Say again.
Page 21 of 88.
Thank you.
And I understand that you'll be put into a waiting room. But we still see you, so I'm not too sure what, okay.
Go
Go on. Councillors, I have a recommendation before me. Do I have a mover and a second of a motion or a motion?
Yes, I'd like to move the motion as printed, and that is the council adopts the neighbourhood house policy.
Is there a second of this motion? Thank you. Is the motion opposed? No. No, the mover, that's 5 minutes to address the meeting.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
That's okay.
So this is a policy developed by our council officers with the two neighbourhood houses we have in our shire, in Castlemaine and Alder. Personally, I think this is a good thing. I do believe both neighbourhood houses do a lot of work in our local community, and they are really an important player. Things like lunches for community, homelessness issues, buses, transport, and I know in Malvern, in some ways, the local neighbourhood house is the thing that brings everyone together for a lot of issues. This policy is like a memorandum of understanding between us and each of those neighbourhood houses. And I think in the past there's been a few issues. So to me, the most important part of this is it's a relationship between us and those two organisations, and the MOU will set out things like how to communicate, and which I think is really important. With this, there is a small amount of money that comes with it, but that does mean that both of those will no longer be able to put in for our community grants. But I believe on top of that, there are some one-off projects that we will continue to support, particularly around community lunches. It just really is, so it is an important organisation, both of them that delivers services to our community, and really it's about trying to formalise our relationship and as we go into the future. So I would put it to the rest of the councillors that I would hope they would support it.
Would any other councillor would like to address the meeting regarding the policy? Yes, Councillor Courtney, you have 3 minutes.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Lesser. I would just like to acknowledge the great work that
the Malden and Castlemaine community houses do in the community, and support Councillor Gardner's comments. Thank you.
Any other councillor? Just a point of clarification. With our local law number 1 meeting procedure, it states that if no councillor indicates opposition, then the chairperson to what we've done, offer the mover the opportunity to address the meeting on the motion, then invite any other councillor to speak to the motion. Once each councillor has been given the opportunity to speak to the motion, declare the motion carried. So we don't need, which is what I've been doing. If there is no opposition, the motion is carried. Thank you. I just thought.
I thought I heard Darren say that.
Yeah, if there was an opposition, but
It's all new. It's all new.
I have been doing it. Yes, it's all new, and I've got it all in large format, and I've studied it up this afternoon. Thank you. Can we bring in Councillor Machen back, please? Good work. So, I thought I'm just going to get okay.
You're right.
Back.
Thank you, Councillor Machen. We have agreed to the recommendation that was in front of us, and we also clarified a point of meeting procedure in the local law, which we copiously studied this morning, that if there is no opposition, the motion is carried. Thank you. We now move on to one of our favourite ones, a review of council's local laws. Councillors, I have a recommendation before me. Do I have a mover?
I'm happy to move the recommendation, and I'll actually read it out, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you.
That council gives notice under section 73 of the Local Government Act 2020. It has prepared a new draft general local law, and that it will commence public consultation in respect of the draft general local law 2020. 2, it notes that officers will undertake a range of community and stakeholder engagement activities during the public consultation phase. 3, agrees to consider submissions received from the members of the public at a future meeting of council. And 4, notes that a further detailed briefing will be provided at the conclusion of the public consultation process to enable council to consider adoption of a final general local law 2020.
Is there a seconder to this motion, please? Councillor Neiman, thank you. The mover, Councillor Petrusca, you've got 5 minutes to address the meeting.
If I only take a minute or two.
Sorry,
All council's local laws will be updated.
sorry, point of order.
Yes,
I think you need to check whether there's any opposition.
Yes.
I thought I did, sorry. I thought I did do that, but if I have not, is the motion opposed?
No.
We'll get there, we'll get there. I had to call a point of order on myself just about. Yes, okay. So the mover,
I'll start again.
the mover to address the meeting.
All right, so all council's local laws are in the process of being updated. This is probably the first major one. I reiterate that it is a draft. Councillors have already done a fair bit of work with our staff and legal experts in relation to drafting this general local law. It's now, the purpose of tonight is to put it out to public consultation, and I urge members of the public to look at the local law, and if there's any concerns with particular laws, that they make appropriate, put in appropriate submissions relating to the numbers and what their concerns are. And I'll again reiterate, this is not the final draft. This is just a draft purely for public consultation. I'm sure that there will be some things that will be picked up, and there will be some changes prior to it finally being adopted by council. So I urge all members of the public that are interested to read the document on the council's website when it becomes available very shortly, and to make submissions if they feel that any laws are unfair or are not written correctly. Thank you.
Any other councillor would like to address the meeting regarding this item?
Thank you. Thanks, Deputy Mayor Lesser. I'd just like to reiterate Councillor Petrusca's comments, but also I'd like to acknowledge the huge amount of work that staff have put into this document. It's a big job, and it's there's a lot of work there, and we must acknowledge the efforts of our staff. So thank you, staff. That's all. Thank you.
Okay,
Second wish to suspend.
no, is there any other, sorry, councillor Machin, yes, I can see you. This is difficult.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And my fellow councillors, I agree very much with all that you're saying. And just as a bit of a prompt to people to have a look at this, these local laws cover a wide range of subjects, and I'm looking at the index. So it's, let's see, camping on private property, recreational vehicles, cigarette butt receptacles, heavy vehicle parking, dangerous land, control of noxious weeds, number of animals allowed, roadside grazing, deceased animal disposal, repair of vehicles. So, you know, it does go on and on. And so it does cover quite a few of the things that people would just do as a normal part of their life. And it would be a great thing for them to look at it and think, oh, how does this affect me and do I agree with it? Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to address the meeting?
Yes, I'd like to say something.
Councillor Gardner, you have 3 minutes also.
I just would like to reiterate, I mean, at this point it is a draft, but I think Councillor Machin has picked up, I think it's really important people have a look at this. I personally am not a great fan of local laws and compliance. I understand and recognise the need of it, but a lot of these things is expanding in a lot of areas and people really need to read it. For me personally, I'd be certainly interested to see community response before I make a decision in terms of how I vote on it.
Any other council would like to address the meeting regarding this local law? Therefore, the motion is carried. But there is an aside to this one. When I first started in local government, that was my job, was local laws. I had to do the local laws and get all that to happen. That was my first introduction to local government many years ago. So I
But it was a lot simpler and a lot easier to do.
But we had dog problems back then. And we're talking, 40 years ago. We still had dog problems. It hasn't changed. Okay, the next item that we have on our agenda is 10.1.3, approval of fraud and corruption prevention policy and the fraud and corruption control plan. Councillors, I have a recommendation before me. Do I have a mover? Yes, Councillor Machin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would like to put the motion that Council, upon recommendation by the Audit and Risk Advisory Committee, approves the fraud and corruption prevention policy and fraud and corruption control plan.
Is there a second for this?
Happy to second. Deputy Mayor.
Is the motion opposed? No. Councillor Machin, would you like to address the meeting, please?
Briefly, thank you, Deputy Mayor. One of the important things that I think is at the background or the foundation of this policy is that Council clearly states that it has absolutely no appetite whatsoever or any risk that will excuse, allow, tolerate in any way fraud or corruption. So we're being very, very plain about that. This policy hasn't come about because we have had fraud and corruption through the organisation. This policy has come about because we are really concerned that we're very clear it is not acceptable, and here's what we're going to do that enables us to be confident that we are managing to reduce any risk and to make it very clear from the top down that it's not acceptable. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to address the meeting regarding this motion?
No,
Sorry, do you, Councillor Neiman?
no.
Okay. So therefore, I declare the motion carried. I had a nice speech prepared for this one before I knew that I would have to chair the meeting. And I did check with our CEO, and I'd like to read it out because it actually means a lot to me. It really does. And so if you could just indulge for a moment, that I could read this out. The heading for me is the council and community interface. And tonight I just briefly want to just talk about that because I think it's important in regard to this. in regard to this, yes, it's okay over there. Now, each one of us as councillors brings to the table our own set of unique skills and abilities and apply their attributes to the material and circumstances presented before them. And in my case, this will please you, I'm known for my succinct, thorough thought patterns and clear and concise explanation of different matters. And I want to thank my fellow councillors and staff for putting up with the exact opposite from me. Now, it's okay, but it is important. In tonight's agenda, there are a number of new council policies. Yes, the content's fine. We all have gone through them with a fine set of inquiring eyes. For me, though, one of the important aspects was the council community interface. And I'm talking about the front pages of each of these documents. And after many attempts, I think 4+, the pages have been amended with a new look community interface in mind. And I want to thank our CEO for making the required changes to achieve a better community interface, and also our organisational capability person has had to put up with my persuasive and comments for change. It hasn't been easy, but it does show that as a total unit council, as council we can, and we do work together for the betterment of our community. And I really thought that I thank for those policies, the front page to be changed. Thank you. We now move on to the Audit and Risk Advisory Committee remuneration policy or recommendation. Councillors, I have a recommendation before me. Do I have a mover?
Yes.
Councillor Neiman. Thank you. Could you read out your motion?
Yeah. Okay. I move that the council approves remuneration payable to an independent committee members, excluding council representatives, of the Audit and Risk Advisory Committee of $400 per meeting. Remuneration payable to the chair of the Audit and Risk Advisory Committee of $650 per meeting. 3, payment of a travel allowance for those independent committee members who travel over 50 kilometres in total to attend a meeting at 90 cents per kilometre. Number 4, annual indexation of remuneration payable and kilometre rate for travel on 1 July in accordance with CPI Melbourne Index June to June quarter.
Is there a seconder for this motion? Yes, Councillor Cordy. Is the motion opposed? Councillor Neiman, would you like to address the meeting regarding your motion?
I think interested citizens should get value for money. We should get value for money. I think that's all I've got to say on that.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to address the meeting regarding this motion? Yes, Councillor Mason.
Remembering to unmute myself there, sorry.
We're all getting used to it.
Thank you, Councillor Neiman. And one of the reasons that, apart from the length of time since the allowances were last reviewed, in that time, the burden put upon our Audit and Risk Committee has significantly increased. and requiring significantly more qualifications, more workload. So it's not just that, oh, we haven't reviewed their income for a few years. This is, and oh, by the way, during that time, the workload and the expertise required has increased significantly. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to address the meeting? Yes, councillor.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Lesser. I'd just like to acknowledge the important work that the Audit and Risk Committee does, and we value the input, and it's very good advice we receive from them. So really appreciate their great work. Thank you.
Any other councillor? I declare the motion carried. And as an aside to this, we should offer some thanks to the chair, Ken Belford, who's given 9 years of service to the Audit and Risk Committee as the chair. And I've been at a few meetings with him and he's done a fantastic job. So I'd like to just move a vote of thanks to the chair who has to retire now after the years of service to the Audit and Risk Committee. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is the Procurement Policy Update 2020. Councillors, I have a recommendation before me. Do I have a mover? Yes, Councillor Cordy.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Lesser. I'd recommend that Council adopts the Procurement Policy 2020, makes a copy of the Procurement Policy 2020 available on Council's website in accordance with Section 186A, Part 8 of the Local Government Act 1989. Thank you.
Is there a second for this motion?
Happy to second, Deputy Mayor.
Is the motion opposed?
No, just doing it, is it the Local Government Act 2020? Or
Mr. Father.
they're both still in Gussie or someone?
Are they awake?
Thanks, Councillor Gardner. It is actually in accordance with the Local Government Act 1989, because the Local Government Act commencement date for 2020 is not until, well, it doesn't come effective until January 2022. So the new Local Government Act 2020 is going to be a staged implementation. So the procurement policy is scheduled to be in stage 4 of that implementation.
Thanks, Bill.
Any other councillor like to address the meeting on this motion?
Yeah,
Councillor Gardner.
You move it first.
you got to move it, you got a second.
We had a second.
It's moving.
I'll address.
And he first.
Yeah, hang on. We had a seconder.
Yep.
Which was Dave.
Yeah.
Right.
No, nobody opposing.
Nobody opposing.
Yeah.
So Tony
So
first.
so now we have the mover. Yes, to address the meeting. That's 5 minutes. But you chimed in before and answered the question.
Sorry
That's
for the
okay.
confusion.
That's okay.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Lesser. Look, this procurement policy is very important. Council spends significant funds in the broader community for all sorts of services. And I'd just like to note some significant changes in the from our previous procurement policy, which has been working quite well. But the procurement threshold 15,000 to 59,999 or 60,000 must now include a local contact economic benefit evaluation criteria with a minimum of 20% weighting. So what we've done there is we've increased the weighting to give local shire-based businesses an advantage in terms of the procurement. Also, and that's a partly a response to COVID-19, is that we want to support the local traders. Clause 3.1.1, procurement threshold 60,000 to 149,999, including GST. We'll have public advertising where possible, and it goes on. And really, the local content is one of the major changes, whereas 20% to all procurement above 15,000, and there's also significant weightings there for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. It's a minimum of 5% weighting. Local content, 20% weighting. Environmental considerations, a minimum of 5% weighting, and social aspect, minimum of 5% weighting. So really, the way these the ratings have been changed is primarily an attempt to promote local businesses and to have council doing more business locally, which we all want to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corey. Councillor Gardner, you can now speak. Or any other council? No,
I'll go.
yes. That was, I should have pulled you up before that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah,
Look, I think Tony's actually just highlighted things I particularly wanted to highlight, but I've been a big advocate for the local content economic benefit criteria. And I just wanted to point out that it first came into play, it was the last year, and it was at 5%. And it's really great to see it go 20%. And I think that if anything through our current COVID-19 situation, what it shows is that our local industries is really important. And so I just hope that this additional weighting will see much more local contractors being successful in these tenders, and obviously as much money that flows to our local community means local jobs, and supports our local shops, and I just think that's a great thing. So I think it's a good policy update.
Thank you. Councillor Trudeman, would you like to?
Yes, thank you. Again, I also fully support the policy. I agree with Councillor Cordy and Councillor Gardner's comments. I just wanted to add that there's been a lot of talk about local businesses not getting jobs over the years, and councillors have taken that on board and have now made it a greater weighting for local businesses. It seems that there's a few reasons why sometimes local businesses don't apply for some of these things, and perhaps some of it is the paperwork. But if any of our local businesses are wishing to supply, I urge them to contact our staff and seek advice and to get up to date with their paperwork, because the paperwork really is everything. We're giving every opportunity with this policy for local businesses to do better in our shire, and it may require some of those businesses to get a little bit more up to date with some of their paperwork policies, which is the balls in their court. So I'd urge our local businesses to brush up on how to put in tenders. The only thing is they still need to be reasonably competitive on price, but all things considered, if they comply with the tender requirements and are competitive on price, they should, under this weighting, almost always get the job. So I urge our local businesses to study what this means and to contact our staff if they need advice to help them put in for some of the works that will be coming up very shortly.
Thank you, Councillor Trudeman. Is there any other councillor that would like to address the meeting on this issue, on this motion? Therefore, I declare the motion carried. Our next item is 10.1.6. The favourite one, community grants, round one, recommendations for funding. Councillors, I have a recommendation before me. Do I have a mover? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Councillor Gardner.
I was looking at the notes.
Sure, yes, we're moving that.
So the recommendation is the council adopts the recommendations for funding of round one of the 2020 community grants program, being 16 applicants applications for a total allocation of $47,754.
Is there a second for this motion?
I'm happy to second. Oh, Deputy Mayor. Or councillor Mason, whichever.
Councillor Mason, yeah, yes, okay. Have that one, hang on a moment, yes. Is the motion opposed? Okay, councillor Gardner, as the mover, you have 5 minutes if you'd like to address the meeting.
Yes, certainly. So as councillors, we don't actually get involved in the actual assessment process. But obviously the grant is a good news story. So we are seeking to approve a total of 22 grants to people and organisations in our local community, and they will do great work. I understand all these applicants will be able to complete their program regardless of the situation with COVID-19, which is good. And the next round, we will probably be talking about a response to COVID-19 and in those community grants becoming a priority. Without going through all the applications, I would just put it to my fellow councillors that we approve these 22 grants. Thank you.
I've just got a query there. It says, is it 16 applications?
Sorry, 16.
Sorry, is it, no, you got the 22, but it said, it's got in the motion that you moved, it was 16.
22.
Sorry, 22 is the total and
Yes,
16 was successful. Sorry.
that's okay. I just want to clarify that. Any other councillor like to address the meeting on the community grants? Councillor Machin.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner and Deputy Mayor Lesser. The only thing I'd like to add, and apart from my pride in this community that just does such wonderful work, is that the next round will be open soon. So keep your eye out for the media release and our Facebook page, and come up with the great ideas, as Councillor Gardner has said. And we'll be very interested in how people are envisaging we can start recovering from the unfortunate situation in which we currently are living. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Machin. Any other councillor like to address the meeting?
Oh, very briefly.
Yes, councillor.
Also, obviously support the motion, and there's a wide range of various organisations across the entire Shire that have been successful, and this is a real, hopefully a bit of a shot in the arm to get some economic development happening in a time where it's really needed. It's not an enormous amount of money, but it'll be money very, very well spent indeed. And you know, some of the organisations are some of our most important organisations across the Shire: the Castlemaine Pioneers and Old Residents, Goldfields Football Club, the Mount Alexander Shire Accommodation Respite Group, Windaring. There's the Newstead Art Salon, and I won't read them all out, but there's quite a few others. There's several in Malden, the museum and archives, urban land care, Chewton Bushlands, etc. Castlemaine Childcare. I won't go through all of them, but I fully support the motion and believe it's a great stimulus for our local economy.
Thank you, Councillor Truesdale. Any other councillor?
Yeah, Max. Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Neiman, yes.
With the letters of refusal for those organisations which ended up just below the line, or the 13 points or whatever, is it possible that we can offer advice to them on how they can apply again?
Can we get
That's more. That's just an observation.
one of them? Yes, I think we have, but we did address this from my memory. We have addressed this, that we were, that I think that the council officers do give them feedback, and there was a training program we had put in place. I was under the remembering for these applications, but maybe yes, so we could bring our CEO, might be able to just quickly, or listen. Otherwise, I really shouldn't ask you. Yes. please.
Look, I'm happy to respond to
I
that.
should
So prior to the community grants applications being assessed, there's a series of workshops. We actually held 3 workshops prior to this. There's a series of telephone calls and emails that have also been applied. So all applicants are certainly encouraged through the workshops, through the telephone calls and through the emails. Our staff spend significant amount of time working with them and encouraging them on how to make their application, what has to be included and any changes that have to be made. So for this round, for round 1, 3 workshops were held. We had a significant uptake and our officers have responded to all applications, and that's certainly something that we plan to continue with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't think that was the case. Any other address, councillor, want to address this one? I declare this motion carried. Item 10.2.1.
I have a motion for this one, Deputy Mayor.
Hang on, I haven't got there yet. Yes. You beat me. So the Castlemaine Streetscape Plans and Designs. Councillors, I have a recommendation before me. Do I have a mover?
You have I'll make a motion, Deputy Mayor, that we defer the matter of 10.2.1, Castlemaine Streetscape Plans and Design, to a future meeting of council.
Do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Cordy. Is the motion opposed? No. Councillor Petrusma.
I'll just make it brief.
Yes.
It's,
You've got 5 minutes.
I won't take 5 minutes. The Castlemaine Streetscape Plans, I just want to make sure that people are aware, we certainly have not forgotten. There's still a few elements of the plan that probably need a little bit of finessing before we actually adopt it, and just defer the matter will allow us to get some more advice and make sure we get it right when we do adopt it, which will hopefully be at a meeting very soon, if not the next meeting, but as soon as we possibly can.
Any other councillor would like to address the meeting on this matter? Yes, councillor Cordy.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Lesser. I'd just like to note there's some fantastic work and designs incorporated in this document. So it's really, there's a few issues that as a council we need to get to a point of agreement on, but it's looking really good, and I'm hopeful that we can do some of this important streetscape beautification work, certainly in the next 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Any other councillor? Councillor Nation, Central Castlemaine Ward Councillor.
Thank you. And personally, I would have been very happy to have adopted this plan. However, I understand that my fellow councillors are a bit uncertain, so I'm supporting them to search that. I'm very concerned that we do this as quickly as possible. One of the readings around recovering from COVID and the downturn in our economy is the importance of keeping our main streets alive. And the sooner we have a plan that is agreed and that we work with our retailers to get going, and it just strengthens our possibility to get funds to keep our main streets looking beautiful, to start attracting people back in once we're allowed to do that. So I respect greatly my fellow councillors' need for getting better information, and I'm sure that our organisation will work to get as much happening as soon as we can as just part of that recovery process. So thank you.
Thank you, councillor Major. Any other councillors to speak to this? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to 10.3.1, planning permit application 008-2020, use and development of a dwelling at 420 Barringup Road, Barringup. Councillors, do I have a recommendation to go? Yeah, recommendation. There's no recommendation. Well, there is one recommendation, but do I have a motion?
You do.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Can we we'll just hang on a moment?
My motion is alternative to what's printed, and I believe it'll come up on the
Yes,
screen
I'm just
for
going to ask.
everyone.
Can we ask
So-
whoever's putting? That's why I was just holding you up for a moment to see that was coming up. It was to come up on the screen. There it is. So you don't have to read it all out. It is on the screen in YouTube watches.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that on your fingers.
So I don't really want to read all that out, but basically, I'm making an alternative motion that we actually issue a planning permit and not a notice of decision of refusal.
Well, that is your motion. Actually. Now, is there a second for Councillor Gardner's motion? Yes, I can see it. Councillor Neiman, you are seconding that motion. Is the motion opposed?
At this stage, I'll probably oppose or wait to see what, if my fellow councillors can convince me otherwise.
Okay, it's just.
I'll flag a possible opposition.
Hang on. I'm asking the question. Is the motion opposed? You have to answer.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay. The motion is opposed by Councillor Petrusno. Therefore, the mover of the motion has 5 minutes to address the meeting.
Go.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
yeah, you've got 5 minutes. There.
As a moment aware, the officer's recommendation is to not, or it's to refuse to issue a planning permit. Now, I'm not seeking to undermine or disregard our planners' position. They are providing a view based upon the law, which one thing is wrong, planning framework. However, there are a couple of things for this one in particular. So this is only a very small lot size of 9.417 hectares. There's two reasons why I would support issuing a permit. The council actually did issue a permit for this in 2012. It was extended to 2014, and an extension was also granted to 2014, but it did actually lapse in 2016. So that's why the applicant has come back. Seems a bit silly under the same framework that a permit would be issued and then pretty much using the same application of the framework in the plans is refused. So for me, that's a reputational thing, and we've already issued one, it should be issued again. Which comes to my second point, I suppose, and I sort of have a view of this sort of blanket, if it's in a farm zone, you can't build on it, which is not correct. So under the planning laws, it says you need a permit, and it depends upon each individual applicant and application if it gets approved or not. To me, a property of 9.47 hectares in Barringup, the best thing you're growing out there is probably rock and cactus. I think you actually get far more value out of someone building a home on this sort of size than actually not. Out in that area and around where I've got a property, there's lots of weekenders, lots of properties with no houses on it, and they just become a place of weeds. People come in, they're unkept, fire risk, and really it's just better to have a house on this sort of size property. The part of the conditions is they will have to still come up with a farm management plan, which is fine, but the reality is that this framework does not meet the need and requirement for large properties in our area, and these small properties are far better off having a house on them than not. So I would hope my fellow councillors will support my my position to actually issue a permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Neiman, as the second.
Thank you.
Would you
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Would you like to
Um,
address the meeting now on your motion or later? You have a choice.
Sorry?
You can either, as a seconder, you can either address the meeting on the motion now or later.
When you say later, what do you mean? I'm not sure.
After
Any objections?
any debate's been had, you don't have to have your say now. You can have it a little bit later on.
I'll go now.
Okay. You've got 3 minutes.
I don't need 3 minutes. I support this motion quite strongly because we're in changing times. As we've seen fairly close to home, many people arrive here from the city but maintain jobs in the city, and we are a commuter society. But why would you move from Melbourne to somewhere like Mackenzie Hill? So you get a certain group of people who are usually well-heeled professionals and working on they used to be called hobby farms, but I don't think they are anymore. I just think it's a way of the future. Sooner or later, we as a community and as a state are going to have to look at this 40 hectares as it's written and to see what can be done about it. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Neiman. Now, any other councillor can now debate the motion in turn.
I'll speak against the motion, Deputy.
Yes, Councillor Petruska, you've got 3 minutes too.
Okay. I take on board what Councillor Gardner and Councillor Neiman said, and I don't necessarily disagree with all of it. I could probably agree with most of it. My issue is in the way that the Act is set out, and the Act is fairly clear, notwithstanding that a permit was actually issued for this back in 2012, was extended and then subsequently lapsed. It would appear that when that was issued in 2012, it wasn't in compliance with the Act then, and it probably shouldn't have been issued by the council back then. I wasn't on council, I can't comment how it was approved, but it would appear it probably shouldn't have been approved. The VCAT decisions and the legislation is fairly clear that you can only build in a farming zone with land less than 40 hectares with a planning permit. And generally speaking, those planning permits need some sort of farming use, whether that be a hobby farm or grapes or some sort of small farming. And we've had quite a number of recent matters in Harcourt and other places where we have in fact knocked back some applicants that are very similar to this one, and we've approved those that have had extensive and quality farm plans. We don't make the legislation, we can only approve matters that come before us that are within the legislation and assessed by our planners. And unfortunately, and I feel sorry for the applicants in this matter, but unfortunately it clearly does not meet the legislation, state legislation, and therefore I believe that the original recommendation should be what we're going with, and in fact the matter be refused. I do agree with Councillor Neiman that we really need to look at a lot of these properties and that are under 40 hectares and look at the zonings, because clearly some of them are on a farming zone that's unproductive, and even there in Councillor Gardner's motion, and he's talking towards it. There's a little bit of an anomaly, but they still have to put in a farm plan. But on one hand, it's allegedly farmland that is unproductive, but yet they've got to put in a farm plan to even be approved under Councillor Gardner's motion. So that in itself is a little bit of a quandary. But I speak against the motion. I think we need to uphold the law as written by the state government, and we probably need to lobby the state government to look at changing the legislation to make these matters a little bit simpler. Otherwise, it leaves us open to costs in VCAT should it be some objection be lodged.
Thank you, Councillor Petruska. Are there any other councillor who would like? Okay, I've got, I don't know if you can see, okay, we'll go with the screen first. Councillor Nature, would you like to? Can you see? Yeah, okay.
Yep, thank you. Thanks, Deputy Mayor. And thank you to both Councillor Gardner and Councillor Petrusma. I was trying to work out which side I would vote on this one, and I've been listening with a great deal of interest. I am voting for Councillor Gardner's amendment at this stage because, and it's unusual for me to do that, I have mostly voted against subdividing farmland to very small lots and building houses on them. However, in this case, I think the quality of the farmland is so poor that I do support Councillor Gardner's belief that this is probably the best use for that land. In so coming to that decision, I also greatly appreciate Councillor Petrusma's position. And part of our problem is that we have not got the mechanisms yet to come up with a set of conditions that works well for what is essentially rural living. And that's something that we as councillors need to get better at, getting those conditions, I think. I do take, I'm not particularly happy with Councillor Neiman's sneering at people not coming from Melbourne to live in Mackenzie's Hill, because in fact, many have, and I know Mackenzie's Hill quite well, and they really do like living there. So it takes all sorts to make this world, Councillor Neiman. Thank you.
Councillor Cordy, it's your turn. You're the last person.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lesser. Look, I've got a couple of points I'd like to make in relation to this. It's noted in the documentation that the existing property is 9.417 hectares. So I just, contrary to what has been said previously, it's not actually a subdivision. It's an existing allotment in its own right, and it may well have had a dwelling on it previously. That, you know, it was probably an old miner's cottage or something that's gone into the ground. But be that what it may, it's a separate allotment, so there's no subdivision. In terms of my understanding of the planning legislation, there's an as of right aspect to allotments over 40 hectares, but it is allowable and it's at council's discretion to issue a permit on allotments less than 40 hectares. And just because it's less than 40 hectares doesn't mean that council must not issue a planning approval for the allotment. So it is at council's discretion. And in my view, as a farmer, I believe it will be more productive with a dwelling on it than not. Certainly, from a council perspective, we would be able to receive more rates on the property with a dwelling on it. And generally, I would support a dwelling on this type of allotment. A small existing properties within our shire, many which have had dwellings on the past. I guess the other thing is planners in the past have seen fit to issue a planning approval for a dwelling on this site. It's a pity that the owners at the time didn't go ahead and build, but I think there's different planners have different views, but certainly the information that we have is that it has had a planning approval issued previously, and I'm quite happy to support the issue of a planning approval for a future dwelling. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cordy. Councillor Gardner, as the mover of the motion, you have the right of reply. You have 3 minutes for that.
Look, I think Councillor Cordy's probably summed it up. I did want to mention though for David, I mean, it's actually the local policy, it's not the state policy
where this comes into play. So, and I know that we're thinking, or hopefully next year, that we're going to do a sort of review of that particular policy and around these issues. So that's all I've got to say. I just hope people will support it.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Now we all get their opportunity. I now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of Councillor Gardner's motion, would they raise their right hand, please? All those against?
Just a moment.
I think that motion was carried.
It was.
Thank you. We now come, okay. We now come to planning permit application 21/2019, the use of a food and drinks premises, retail premises, a cafe liquor license and a business identification signage at 158 Victoria Road and 2C Warren Street, Harcourt. Councillors, I have a recommendation before me. Do I have a motion? Oh, Councillor Cordy.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Lesser. As I would like to move the motion as printed, as the recommendation printed. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Hang on. Okay. Yes, thank you, Councillor Petrusma. Is the motion opposed? No. Therefore, the motion is well. No, I'll let the mover have 5 minutes to address.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Deputy Mayor Lesser. Look, I'd just like to comment. I remember as a young child going to Bloom's Bakery and with my mother and picking up fresh bread there. And certainly what we're talking about here is quite a bit more than baking bread, but it is a fantastic historic icon in the Harcourt community, this bakery, and I believe the permit that we're talking about today for a cafe liquor license may well make the difference between that continuing as a viable business and maybe, or if it's not issued, being closed down as it has been for many years. So look, I support this. I know there's a lot of people within the Harcourt community that have concerns, but I believe this is a very good business, a good opportunity, and I think by having an additional facility of this type in Harcourt, it will actually build the business base. So I don't think it will harm the existing businesses in the town at all. In fact, I think having an extra destination type facility will be to the benefit of Harcourt. So I strongly support it. Thank you.
Any other councillor like to address the meeting? Councillor Trusler?
Yeah, I also support the second of the motion, also support this matter. It has been a matter that's been going for a while. Just to reiterate that the bakery has in fact been running as a home-based business and has been operating successfully that way for a period of time. After not running for many years, it had new owners and they started the bakery back up again, and perhaps Councillor Forty might know the amount of years it was absent for, but the bakery was made back up and running as a home-based business. This particular application is to probably take a little bit out of the realm of a home-based business to a little bit more of an actual business. There were a number of objections originally. There was a meeting held between councillors and the applicants and objectors, which was a very good meeting. A lot of points were raised. As a result of that, the application was varied, taking on board many of the things that were part of the objections. I believe at least one objection was withdrawn. I believe some are still in existence, but many of the objections were taken into consideration in an altered plan. I'm of the same view as Councillor Cordy, that the business has already been running. I don't believe it's a threat to any of the other businesses in Harcourt, and if anything, I believe it will actually assist other businesses in Harcourt, bringing more people into Harcourt. And for those that have been looking for great food during this COVID times, our Harcourt businesses are open during the day and other businesses in the evening, supplying great food. So takeaway food, beautiful, fresh. And this is just another one of those businesses. It's usually so popular that you don't get your Anzac biscuits and fresh bread before about midday. You probably won't get any. So I fully support the motion, and I look forward to seeing the business expand.
Thank you, Councillor Petrusma. Any other councillor like to address the meeting on this?
Just briefly.
Yes, Councillor Gardner.
Yes, I mean, this has been on for some while. I just wanted to briefly, I think this was the first application we did under our change scheme. Yeah, so, and originally at that point it was a rejection. So I just wanted to highlight that, in that I think that the actual applicant objector meeting we had, it was really well attended. We heard from everyone for and against. And I just wanted to say, I think to the applicant, good on them for going back, taking on board some of the feedback. I think there was some rather direct feedback for some councillors from memory. They've taken that on board and made some amendments, and good on them. And I just hope that that's sort of an indication of that new system going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Any other councillor that would like to speak? I declare the motion carried. Now, just before we move on, there is one item that is, and this is highlights what I said before in the meeting, my little speech, that each councillor has their own abilities, their own talents, and they bring that to the table. And one of the things that was important for me in this application was item number 1E, and that is no work to be undertaken on the existing shed on the Warren Street frontage without the further written consent of the responsible authority. Now, councillors may not be aware of this, but there are only 4 examples in this shire of the tin that's on the Warren Street side of that shed. So it's a special tin that was imported from England, and there are only 4 examples that I know of in this shire of that tin. And for me, that was really important from a historical perspective to make sure that that shed wasn't bolted. So I thank the planners for listening to me. But yeah, it's very, very important, that tin. Okay. We now come to delegates' reports. This is where our CEO, and of course our mayor can't be with us, so our CEO has the delegates' reports, and is going to put that up on the screen.
Coming up now, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, we can see that now. Would you like to speak to some of these items, please?
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor. Could I first just acknowledge and welcome Deputy Mayor Jess Howard to her first meeting of council as our Director of Infrastructure and Development. Jess, as you know, started on the 6th of April and has been working away in a very strange environment the whole time that she's been with us. And I think it'd be fair to say that adding to that strangeness for Jess is the last time she sat around this formal table, this very formal table, was as a councillor, as one of you. So to be sitting with us as a director supporting you is, I'm sure, a very strange experience for Jess, but I just really wanted to welcome her to our team, Deputy Mayor. The second matter I wanted to mention was way down at the end of the list there, you can see that the Mayor didn't in fact get to attend this one today, and instead Councillor Mason and Councillor Cordy did attend. there was a funding announcement by Marie Edwards on the Harcourt Place space where she announced an additional $100,000 towards that project. That's on top of the $250,000 that she and we had secured for that project already. So a terrific contribution. Just wanted to say thank you again to our very good friend in Marie Edwards for once again finding a way to secure funds for our projects. So too, can I say a big thank you to another great friend of ours, Mark Allen, who is the regional director at DELP, who was instrumental in helping to make that happen also. Other matters that are on the list, I wouldn't normally pick up on one like this, but I think it's worth it. You'll see scattered throughout there many times is CEOs catch-ups, and we've been having weekly forums for many weeks now. We being the 9 CEOs within the Loddon-Campaspe region, from Macedon through to Campaspe and Gannawarra in the far north. And I have to say, Deputy Mayor, much like our staff who've been really making enormous adjustments to getting things done despite the COVID-19 restrictions that we've got. And can I just say how proud I am of the work that the staff have been doing and how they've managed to adjust and continue to keep providing great service to our community and to each other. The CEOs too have been probably working even more closely together than ever before, and we are a very supportive team already, Deputy Mayor, but we've seen the need to even come together weekly throughout the COVID situation to just understand from each other what's happening and how each of us is dealing with the challenges that we've got. They're similar but different challenges, and I think I can safely say we owe a big thank you to the other CEOs throughout the region for the way that we've been able to develop responses so far to supporting our community. So thank you to them all. I'm sure they're all watching. That's all for me, Deputy Mayor, unless there's any questions.
Councillor, do you have any questions?
No, but can I just?
Yes,
I would like to thank the staff for getting this set up tonight in the manner that it is. Quite a number of us have had problems trying to come in on electronic meetings from home, which is why we've got 4 councillors present in the chambers with social distancing, and we've got other councillors at home who manage to have connections, and it's practical for them to still work from home. Where for the 4 of us here tonight, it's not practicable to work from home because it just simply doesn't work at all. And I thank the staff that have worked at fairly short notice to get this happening and for it to be so successful. So thank you to Darren and all our staff that were involved, our technical staff.
The only reason I bring up because I had a small business meeting on Monday, which was a Zoom meeting, and there were people from around Victoria. And what fascinated me was that half of the people taking part were from Castlemaine. So that threw me a bit. And I know that it also goes to show you that it was run by Small Business Victoria, that on the Zoom it fell over because one of the presenters couldn't get access to power. So you can't plan. This was about planning and resilience. So that's what happens. Okay, finish with the delegates' reports. Notices of motion. I don't see that we have any notices of motion. I don't see that we have any urgent or special business. And I also see that we don't have any confidential reports. So therefore, I declare the meeting closed at 8 o'clock.
Well done, Deputy Mayor.
So that's it.
8:02.
8:02. Thank you. Thank you all.